Hi, I'm Yannis, and this is a quick tour to the Snowdrop Service Catalog client for Java. This client is an extension of the Fabricate Kubernetes client that introduces a DSL for manipulating the service catalog resources. It is very user-friendly as it shares the same conventions and DSL awesomeness as the Kubernetes client. In this tour, I will do some live coding, where I'll start from scratch and will move step by step to service provisioning and binding. But before I jump into my editor, please allow me to do some sort of introduction to the service catalog itself. So what is the service catalog? It is a Kubernetes extension which brings service brokers into Kubernetes. The idea of a service broker is that it acts as a service marketplace for the platform. The broker can be used to provision all kinds of services, from internal to external services, like, for example, the Amazon Relational Database Service. The concept of the service broker is being standardized as part of the Open Service Broker API initiative, which is backed by Red Hat and Pivotal. The Service Catalog extension allows Kubernetes administrators to register such brokers into Kubernetes and the user to explore them, list the service types, provision and bind to services. At this point, I will just jump into my editor and start by instantiating the service client. I just need to create an instance of the default service catalog client without having to specify any additional configuration. When I'm not specifying things like a URL, auth tokens and things like that, the client tries to figure those things out from the environment, either environment variables, system properties, or actual files like the .kubeconfig. In the particular case, it will find the .kubeconfig file and determine the URL to the API server and the auth token from there. At this point, I'll start by listing all the available brokers in the cluster. I'll get the items, stream them, and I'll just keep the name of the broker, and for each name I'm gonna just dump them to the standard output. I have two cluster service brokers, the Ansible service broker and the template service broker. And in the same way, I'm gonna list all the available cluster service classes. The names of the cluster service class doesn't provide much context, as they are plain IDs. So if I'd like to get a better understanding of what exactly is the service class about, I'll have to display information from within the specification of the cluster service class, like the external name. The external names are much more meaningful, so we see things like 3-scale gateway, Jenkins ephemeral, Jenkins persistent, MariaDB persistent, and more. I can now do the same and display all the available cluster service plans. and we see values like dev, default, persistent, prod, and stuff. A cluster service plan on its own doesn't say much, so it's more meaningful to talk about the cluster service plans for a particular service. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to start from a specific broker. I'm going to use the Ansible service broker, and from that broker I will select the MariaDB cluster service class, and I will try to list all the available plans for that particular service. So let's start. I will query the cluster service brokers by name. I will state that I'm interested in the MariaDB APB cluster service class, and I'll request to list all the available plans. I have two plans. One is called dev and the other is called prod. Let's select the dev plan and try to create a service instance. This method will return an instance of the service instance object. I have a typo. And let's try it. No errors or whatsoever, so let me jump into my Kubernetes dashboard. The service catalog generated a deployment config, which currently has one pod running. And yeah, it seems that everything is fine. If I need to bind to that service, I can create a service binding. In the binding, I need to specify the name of the secret that I want the service catalog to generate. And also, I need to specify a reference to my service instance. To avoid name classes with the existing service instance, I'll just rename that to MariaDB service 2, and I should be fine. The new service has just been created. The pod is in running state and everything seems fine. I could combine the last two actions into a single in order to create an instance and bind to it with a one-liner. Let me show how we could do that. I could specify that I want to instantiate MariaDB and also bind to a secret. Let me bump this to number 3 to avoid name collisions. It looks good. And I'm waiting for the third instance of MariaDB to start. Yeah. And everything looks great. I can check to make sure that secrets have been generated for all my service bindings. And I could inspect the content of those secrets. And as you can see, it includes information about the host, the name of the database, and also the credentials. I can then use that secret and mount that secret, or use it as any variables inside my container in order to obtain this information and actually consume the service. Before I close this video, I'd like to say that the Snowdrop Service Catalog is available on GitHub under the Snowdrop organization, and we are going to have our first community release really soon. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you. Bye bye.